The following is a special presentation of ABC Sports.
As long as I performed and played ball, I was allowed to do anything.
Second and goal. Muncie, up over the top. Touchdown, San Diego.
It was a nightmare. One never-ending nightmare.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Ray Richardson.
I went through the program, and while I was there, I was always planning how I was going to get high when I got out.
Dexter Manley gets the sack.
First, drug was my friend, but in the end, it became my enemy.
Malone lays it up, and it's good!
All my life, I wanted to play in the NBA, and it had come true, and I wasn't happy.
Ty Beviloni and Randy Gardner were the youngest pair ever to represent the United States in international competition back in 1974. Now they're the mature world champions.
I decided to take these sleeping pills. I really did not want to be on the earth again. And so that's when I tried suicide.
Sports arenas normally are associated with excitement and the talents of perfectly conditioned athletes on display. But when the crowd goes home and the arena is silent and empty, some athletes look for a different and a very dangerous kind of excitement, the kind that's found in a bottle, a pill, or a needle. These people are alcoholics and drug addicts, and many of them have been in the news for their problems as much as for their achievements. In the next hour, Lynn Swan and I will be talking about athletes' involvements with the most widely used drug, alcohol, and the drugs that once were called recreational, an ironic term in light of what we now know. Steroids, by the way, are an equally dangerous matter, but they require another program on another day. The principal thrust of our program today will be to introduce you to the world of recovery. How does an athlete arrive at a treatment center in the first place? What's the process of recovery? Can 28 days change an athlete's life? Is recovery a sure thing or a long shot? Addiction is a disease of denial, so this program may apply to you and yours more than you realize. You may learn something important to your life here, so don't deny yourself that chance. The trigger for the disease of addiction is in the brain, so you may have the disease and not know it until you pull the trigger, and you do that by using drugs or drinking alcohol.
Having addictive disease is not a character flaw. It's not a matter of willpower. It's not even a matter of intelligence.
These are medical problems. They're medical problems that express themselves in a social environment, but they are medical problems, and the treatment depends on medical personnel.
It has nothing to do with how good of a person you are or how moral you are. It has a lot to do with internal neurochemistry in the brain and what happens when somebody that has that genetic predisposition exposes their brain to the toxic effects of the alcohol or drugs.
Addiction can be inherited just as physical characteristics like a pretty face can be. If one or both parents are alcoholic or addicted, 1 child in 3 probably will inherit the disease. Take a look at people on the street. About 14%, athlete or non-athlete, are predisposed to addiction. The signs of addiction vary, but in general they are these. 1, loss of control. Even if you use drugs or drink alcohol just once every 6 months, but cannot control your use, you might have addictive disease. 2, problematic consequences. That means if your use causes any kind of problem in your life, from speeding tickets to arguments with your family. And 3, withdrawal symptoms such as hangovers or headaches.
Abuse is really using drugs or alcohol to excess so that the effects have some adverse effect on the person who's using them. Addiction carries it one step further. people who are addicted to drugs or alcohol would like to stop using their substance of choice, but they're unable to.
Addiction doesn't happen overnight. There are different stages to the process. Some drugs, like alcohol, can take years. Others, like crack cocaine, just weeks.
The reality is there are no safe drugs. And when I say drugs, I'm including alcohol. They all have the potential to be toxic. They all have the potential to cause adverse health effects to the brain neurochemistry and to the body in general. And they all can cause addiction.
Why do athletes use drugs? Many reasons, many excuses, many rationalizations. Chuck Muncie thought cocaine was cool, glamorous. Some jockeys say, well, it helps me keep my weight down and relax. Saddest of all, kids respond to peer pressure or think it will relieve that awful shyness of youth, make them feel grown up.
I was 6 years old when I started drinking and smoking pot. First time I started pot was when I found my brothers doing it downstairs. So it was like, they didn't want me to tell my mom, so they told me to come here, so told me to smoke it. So I did.
And I liked it, and then, a lot of people liked me. I didn't know how to be normal, especially like with the girls. I was real shy with girls, and that helped me a lot.
Remember this moment in the 1980 Olympics? Injured Randy Gardner couldn't go on. The dream ended for him and partner Ty Babylonia. To this day, they haven't talked about it.
I don't want to blame the skating. I really think it goes back into my childhood and how I was brought up. A family that's not real vocal, we really didn't know how to express our feelings.
After the Olympics, they joined Ice Capades. To most people, a glamorous life. The feeling it brought Ty was a terrible loneliness.
I was having trouble sleeping. I guess I was depressed and lonely, and the show manager of Ice Capades suggested that I have a glass of wine before I go to bed. And I thought, oh, that's easy, fine, no problem. And it worked. One glass of wine evolved into a bottle of wine. The pills, the amphetamines, started due to a weight problem I had. These pills were going around the show, and this is what the girls used, and they were slim, and they looked beautiful. I thought, well, okay, that's how they do it, I'm gonna do it. And I liked it. I enjoyed the feeling. It was my way of being invisible. In 1988, I had hit rock bottom. I was very depressed. I wanted to take my life. I tried to take my life. That was the year I knew that something drastically had to be changed in my life.
She finally knew she had hit rock bottom. Bruce Kimball's addiction meant death for the two teenagers he hit while driving an out-of-control car while drunk. This was a young man who had won an Olympic silver medal, a man who had himself been the victim of a drunk driving accident in 1981. Now he's a prisoner, serving a 17-year sentence for manslaughter. Bruce Kimball thought it couldn't happen to him, the nightmare of a court trial and imprisonment. He wasn't an alcoholic, so he told himself. Denial is a chief symptom of addiction. Every hockey fan remembers Derek Sanderson, once the highest paid athlete in the world, later a hopeless derelict in Central Park. One night it hit him, what they call a moment of clarity.
I was in Central Park, and I was sleeping under bridges, and I certainly wasn't happy with the situation, and I needed a drink. And this guy came in, he was an executive type, lost his tie, had a Brooks Brothers suit on, and he had a couple bottles on him. I waited for him to go to sleep. And I figured I would just sneak a bottle from him and take the edge off. And he woke up. And I said, come on, he said, get away from me. And I said, give me a drink. I said, we're in the same place. He says, no, I'll get your own. Belligerent that he was, unreasonable resentments. So I said, come on. I said, do you know who I am? Well, the single dumbest thing I ever said to anybody in my life. He goes, yeah, I know who you are. Now I'm embarrassed. My ego comes back full bore. I said, oh, wow. Cover up, lie, con. He says, you're a drunk, just like me. Now, get away from me. And he walked away. And I said, oh, God, I need help.
Steve Howe needed help even as he struck out the final batter of the 1981 World Series for the Dodgers, but he wouldn't admit it. 6 years later, he left his family, almost died from a cocaine overdose.
I started feeling so low about myself that I started losing vision. I mean, I started losing hope. I probably the last 2.5 years of my addiction, I tried as hard as I could to stop, and I couldn't. So for the first time in my life, I contemplated taking my own life. I think that was my bottom. I had lost everything that I ever worked for, that I ever dreamed for as a kid. And I knew I wanted it, but I didn't know how to get it.
Steve's a lucky man. He hit bottom before he died. If the alcoholic or addict doesn't get help, there are 3 possibilities: a mental hospital, jail, or death. For Mercury Morris, it was jail. For John Matuzak, it was death. It might come for an addict in an automobile accident, an overdose, or something else related to their addiction, but it will come. Carl Monroe caught this pass in the 1985 Super Bowl. 4 years later, the ambulance rushed to the scene, but it was too late for Carl Monroe. It didn't have to end that way. Although it's not the only way to get sober, many athletes begin the journey toward recovery by entering a treatment center. Now, sometimes treatment doesn't work the first time, or the second time, or the third time. In fact, about 60% of addicts and alcoholics will relapse at some point in their lives. When treatment's over, the real struggle for sobriety is just beginning. And that struggle, whether the problem is alcohol, drugs, or both, will last for the rest of the athlete's life. That's why they're always recovering and never recovered. The treatment process is extremely intense and highly confidential. No credible treatment program would allow cameras to interrupt that process. So in the following scenes from an actual treatment center, you'll meet a group of 7 recovering alcoholics and addicts who have returned to relive their own treatment experience. In these scenes, there are no scripts. The stories these people tell are their own, including that of the athlete in this group, an NHL hockey player who received treatment at this center. Day 1 is a scary day at the treatment center. What's coming, they wonder. Well, first is the admissions counselor, who takes a drug history.
And now's the time to let me know exactly what you were doing and how much you were doing. So what would be the drug of your choice?
Alcohol.
Alcohol.
Next comes a full physical exam, possibly a detox program. Then the patient meets the person who will be his counselor.
Okay, Dave, so what's your drinking been like the past year? How much you been drinking?
At the most, I think I'd drink, I could see myself drinking 20 beers, 24 beers, or 26 ouncer.
Of what?
Vodka mostly.
26 ounces of vodka?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of vodka. Dave, I'm just looking over what you've told me here. And from the information you've given me, it is my professional opinion that you are an alcoholic.
The education process begins.
This group of genetic predisposition afflicts males and females equally and accounts for about 80% of people with alcoholism.
The experts have their own meeting on the hockey player's case, talking about nutrition, exercise, aftercare, family involvement.
The next patient is David H.
Okay. Dave is a 29-year-old Caucasian male who was born in Canada. He's been married for 9 years and is a professional hockey player with the NHL. He was referred to treatment by his coach. He was given an ultimatum by the coach to either come to treatment or lose his job. He'd be off the team.
Athletes can be tough to treat. Often they think they're not like those other people. After all their lives they've been told they're special. Now they're not. Lynn Swan explored the subject.
And taking direction because they're so protected.
Some communities make high school sports a major priority. Star players are given exemptions and lessons that almost guarantee failure in life, such as failing an English test and still getting a passing grade, or getting caught for speeding and not getting a ticket. One high school player told us he kept cocaine in his locker, and when the coach found out, he simply looked the other way.
When he caught us with his stuff in his lockers, he called us in his office to talk to us about it. Told us he ain't gonna say nothing about it. We're his best players. So just let it go this time.
Football in Texas is almost as big as God, man. And they really help athletes out. And there were times when I probably really didn't deserve a grade. But, I think because of my willingness and my respectability that, they felt that I was a nice guy and they give me an extra grade or so.
Through college and into the pros, the special treatment continues. An athlete learns there will always be someone to pick up the pieces, take care of problems, tell him how to run his life.
Their paycheck comes to my office. They live on an allowance. I teach good spending habits and saving habits if I can. All the bills are prepared from the office. We prepared their wills, their trust, the corporate structure, insurance program, taxation, help make all the investments, negotiate the commercials, product endorsements, autobiographies, movies, television appearances, anything happens in their lives, including prenuptial agreements and divorce settlements.
However, for the 30 or more days that an athlete is in treatment, there is no one there to help out. There are no crowds and no cheering fans. There is just the athlete alone with his addiction. Another block in recovery is the athlete's belief in his own physical power. Athletes are so accustomed to performing in the outer limits of physical action, they have difficulty admitting they're sick. If they can't confess to the problem, they won't be able to start recovery.
The NFL was telling me I had a problem, and I was saying, wait a minute, I don't have a problem. I'm still performing my job. I'm doing well. I'm making arm run. I'm being all pro. We're in the playoffs every year. I'm setting touchdown records. What do you mean I got a problem?
One of the saddest stories of addiction is that of Dexter Manley, who was pushed along through all of his schooling without ever learning how to read.
And it
People cared about the player, but not many people cared about Dexter, the person.
Definitely treated as a piece of meat and a god, and nobody dealt with Dexter's needs, and nobody tried to really teach Dexter. And his feelings about himself had to be terrible.
I just thought that, I was just this bad person and this dumb guy and the stereotype, the dumb black jock. And so I've always wanted to protect that. And I was always ashamed of that. And so it was just something that I carried around for 28-some years of my life. And I really don't know how I got out, only but the grace of God knows. They say God protect babies and fools, and I was one of those.
Dexter never used cocaine until he was in the NFL. Before then, Dexter was afraid of the effect it might have on football, the only thing that ever gave him confidence. Cocaine was a reward to himself, and before long, it was his addiction. After 3 positive drug tests, the NFL banned Dexter from playing for 1 year without pay. Finally, he had to take responsibility for his own actions.
I feel so grateful that things turn out the way it did. Despite of the material things, the money, this is what needed to happen to me to wake me up.
Although the athlete's on his own in the treatment center, he is not alone. This is group therapy. No two athletes are put in the same group. They're with an assortment of people, all with the same disease, addiction.
I used to look down at other junkies. By the way, my name's Ray, and I'm a heroin addict. I've been using heroin for about 10 years. I was tired of being sick. I just got tired. The drug wasn't working for me. My whole last 9 months before I got here, the last 9 months, every time I'd put a needle in my arm, I'd go, what are you doing?
Before I came here, what I saw just scared the heck out of me. And what I saw was this guy that was just totally pale. And what it reminded me is when we were having services for my dad, and I saw in the casket that I mean, he was pale, and he was dead. And I looked in the mirror, and I was pale, and I was dead. And
Sounds like you're in the right place, Jesse. I'm glad you're with us. What about you, Michelle?
I can't believe we're all talking about this stuff because this has all been a secret. For me, I've been hiding it from everyone because I wasn't raised to be an alcoholic. And, you know, it just wasn't meant in the stars for me. I mean, I was a nice girl, and I didn't end up a nice girl. And, you know, it's real hard to talk about this stuff. I started not being able to do my job. And I would ask God to, He could take everything else in the world away from me, but don't take that beer away. And at first I kept telling myself, oh, this is neat, but it doesn't feel good at all. And booze is just my medicine now, and I didn't mean to turn out this way. And I'm trying to accept the fact that it's a disease and that I'm sick. But I can't help thinking different. And so anyway, that's all.
You are responsible for your behavior. None of you is responsible for being an alcoholic or a drug addict. Unless you knew when you took that first drink or fix that you were alcoholic or a drug addict.
See, I don't understand. I know we've been only here, the afternoon here, and I just had one session in group, but I don't understand that yet. I can't relate to that. I just say it's a weakness. I just wanted to have a good time. Yeah, I think you got to be self-sufficient. I think you got to work for anything you get. That's how I think a lot of us, no matter what job you do, sports or anything, that's how we get here. Why can't I work this out? Why can't I do this on my own?
You can maintain abstinence with help, but you can't do it alone, and you're going to have to surrender that willpower and that idea of self-sufficiency. You do have a disease. It is bigger than you are.
You do have a problem, and that's the reason why you're here.
Dave, you have alcoholic liver disease, and if you keep drinking, you'll die of cirrhosis of the liver.
Dave, it's my professional opinion that you are an alcoholic.
If you continue to drink, you will no longer physically be able to play hockey.
Across the blue line, down the left side, Hunter winds up, shoots, he scores! Dave Hunter!
When you're all the way down and there is no place to go,
thinking, meditation, is most important, alone or with others. For the first week, there were no phone calls. Television is restricted. Every morning begins with a meditation walk. Everything's on a regular, structured schedule. Breakfast at the same time every day. The diet is carefully monitored. No caffeine, low cholesterol.
Oh, man, I'm full.
Then there are chores. You may wonder what running a vacuum has to do with recovery. Never mind. Just do the chore you're assigned like everybody else. There are lectures after lectures. 2 or 3 a day are compulsory. They talk about feelings and family, spirituality, relapse, anything and everything that can lead toward recovery. Some people arrive at the center so worn out by their disease that they can hardly take a short walk. On the other hand, athletes need a lot of exercise to keep them in shape for their work. So exercise programs are tailored to the individual, but there is exercise for everybody. Now this is free time, limited but important. Out of the formal group, you learn to open up your feelings to other people. Like everything else, free time is part of the treatment. And don't forget the lectures. They take place in the morning, afternoon, and evening. Going to school, you might say, not to learn how to make a living, but how to make a life. Dinner is early, but it's not the end of the day, more like a punctuation mark. Afterwards, if there isn't a lecture, there's something else, a movie, an assignment, maybe an AA meeting, all aimed at topic A. And at last, a nice soak in the whirlpool to soften the effects of withdrawal for new arrivals, then sleep and a big day tomorrow. Now the addict learns how the disease has affected his or her family, and the family members themselves come separately for their own treatment. They're sick too.
You all look pretty serious when you talk about family. What's been happening? Who wants to share here?
It was very difficult when my husband came. We'd been separated for a while, and I hadn't seen him since obviously coming out here. And I think he came with the idea that this was going to sort of reinforce that everything was my fault. I know that he found out something a little different. He found out that he had some part in this whole thing. But it's unsettling.
In what way, Mary? What?
Well, I think I'm sort of hoping for this big dramatic change in him, and I don't see that happening.
What's going on, Bill?
Family was like a waste of time for me yesterday. You know, you bring me here, or I get here, ever how the hell I got here. I learned about feelings, and my ex-wife came, and I don't know. I thought y'all were supposed to help people put their lives back together. Wife still don't want me. She can't forget, can't forgive. What the hell she come for? Did nobody talk to her what this program is about?
What I'm going through is the same kind of feelings. You know, and I got just to realize that, you know, I said sorry, and and it hurt because they rejected me. They pulled back. But, you know, the more I listen and this program, I don't know if I can do the best of my ability. But I'm not going to try to change her or your parents or anybody. I don't know if I can change them. You know, and it's going to take time. But I can feel, I really relate what you're going through, because I feel rejected. And you know how bad I feel like rejection. I don't like it. I felt hurt.
Yeah, but you said your wife was going to take time. My wife said she don't want me. My ex-wife don't want me. All the time in the world is not going to do me any good. She don't want me back.
This disease, we don't get off scot-free with it, do we? They talk about cleaning up the wreckage of the past, and when they say we're like a tornado roaring through the lives of other people, that's the truth. We've done a lot of damage, and it's not going to be healed overnight. It's going to take some time.
Athletes like Steve Howe can be an inspiration to children, particularly their own. They can inspire them or break their hearts.
I felt scared and sad. When Daddy was doing it, if God wasn't with him, he probably would have been dead, because he took it a lot and he wasn't home at night and everything.
Well, Daddy is home these days, but little Chelsea can't forget that he was away an awful lot during her first 5 years, actually in and out of treatment centers. Remember, it doesn't always work the first time or the second. Steve missed her first 2 Christmases. Cocaine was his companion then. Steve's wife, Cindy, the sweetheart of his college days, says she felt like a single married person.
I resented him. There was some anger because he wasn't meeting my needs. I'd go through stages. There would be an anger stage where I'd get really angry at him. He's doing it again. And I'd hurt and I'd cry. And then there would become an acceptance stage. And then I'd be okay. Then the rest of the evening I'd be at peace and I'd be able to go to sleep.
I knew and I wanted to go home, but the draw of the cocaine was stronger than the going home.
I felt I was in an inner conflict, back and forth, because there's this part of me that says, I won't put up with that kind of treatment, and yet there's that same time where I really loved him. And I just wouldn't accept this disease was going to beat us. I tried to leave Steve. I wanted to, but it never worked because I loved him, and I couldn't change that.
Nobody could change Steve except Steve, and Steve wasn't getting it done. His disease affected his wife, his daughter, and his teammates too. 3 different major league teams gave him a chance, and he let them all down.
When I found out that he really and truly was involved with drugs, I tell you, it broke my heart. I'll tell you why, because I loved Steve, and I still do. Ever since Steve left, we've been looking for an outstanding left-hander relief pitcher. It had a great effect on our team.
I would like him to be able to walk away successful and hand that down to our kids instead of walk away, as the guy that didn't make it.
Steve's been clean now for 2 years, and his dream still lives to come back to the major leagues. This may be the loneliest, most painful part of treatment. It's called a fearless and searching moral inventory, step 4 in the Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program, around which most treatment programs are structured. Sit there by yourself, no matter how long it takes. It may take weeks. Sit there at a level with yourself. Do it on paper. Write it down, how you've affected your parents, your spouse, your brothers and sisters, your friends, your teammates. Write it down. And when you're finished, you'll have taken a big step down that long, hard, unending road toward recovery.
Don't look back on your life with regret. This is the beginning of a brand new day.
From the first day, patients at the center are told that the tough times can get tougher when you leave treatment. What used to be called falling off the wagon here is called relapse. One thing they're told to do is to change playgrounds and playmates. Well, the athlete can't do that. He has to go back to the same team and teammates, the same coach, the same crowd.
It is a chronic condition. Your old, addicted thinking and feelings are still in you. And there's going to be a part of you that's always going to want to get high. You've spent a lifetime getting sick. You will spend the rest of your lifetime getting well. And it won't happen fast. Please remember, a day at a time and progress, not perfection. Thank you.
Michael Ray Richardson took the advice to change his playmates and his playground seriously. An NBA All-Star before his 2-year suspension for drug use, Michael chose instead to play in Italy.
It's not like home. See, over here, when you get caught doing drugs, you don't go to a drug clinic. You go directly to jail. That's a big step. This is my 3rd year, and I haven't ran across anyone that has tried to even offer me drugs.
In Italy, Michael's biggest challenge is on the court as the team star. Back home, it was avoiding those people outside the arena who would feed his disease by offering him drugs.
I'll be addicted to drugs for the rest of like my life, and like I know now that I'm not really strong enough, even after I've been clean 5 years now, that I can go somewhere where it's like there's like drugs at. I just don't do it.
Tom Bill, quarterback for Penn State, returned to action this year after checking himself into a treatment center for alcoholism. Any fear of returning was eased by the support of Joe Paterno.
He went away for 30 days to rehabilitation place. Came back and has been one of the most positive people I've ever had on a football team. He's a fine quarterback. He's a great leader on the team. He has to go to AA. You know, he knows he's got a sickness and he's living with it, and he knows that every day he's got to fight it.
For any player who thinks he has a problem, Tom Bill is a lighthouse of warning.
I think a lot of them realized they were probably on the fringe of it. You know, and here comes Tommy to the front, and all of a sudden everybody understands it's just not something that you can play around with lightly.
Chris Mullen also sought treatment in the middle of the season for alcohol addiction. His teammates eased the pressure of his return by understanding and not offering him drinks.
First day back, it was like I never left. I was the one that felt, when you first come out, you feel like you're being stared at and looked at and always judged. And maybe you are, maybe you're not, but that's something you gotta regain confidence in yourself and gain confidence from others. I don't really go to a bar just to go hang out, I'll go eat, maybe have a soda, and then, that's about it, and I really don't miss it that much, because the next day I feel good. Now, I wake up feeling great and feels nice. I like that much better than I do the other things that I've been through.
An athlete must also handle the public reaction of the fans, which can be either cruel or understanding.
There shouldn't be stress placed on the fact that they are athletes. Although they are in the public eye, they need help just like anyone else.
The home fans have been great. They've been fantastic, the Golden State Warrior fans, and they've given me time to grow, and I think, I think they're understanding people.
But the world of sport is still to a great extent a macho world. Having a drink with the guys is a part of the ritual, but it's out of bounds for the alcoholic athlete. He must return to the same teammates as a different man, a sober man, and it isn't easy.
And how can I go back to the team? Everybody goes for a team beer, and then I'm going to say, hold it, I'm an alcoholic, I can't drink.
We're talking about your life here. And if you don't give that top priority, you're not going to have anything else. This disease is bigger than you are, and it's going to take over, and it's going to kill you if you don't do something about it. And we don't play around with that. Don't think you're really convinced of that yet, Dave, and that's what worries me for you. I'm going to ask you to do something, and it's going to be a big test of your willingness. I'd like you to stand up and go around the room and tell each person who you are. I'm Dave, and I need help. Bill, will you help me? And then go to the next person. Will you do that?
I am Dave. I need help. Will you help me, Bill?
If you don't jive me, man. Don't jive me. I ain't got time for that.
I'm Dave. And I need help. Will you help me, Cheryl?
Sure I will. You got
it. I am Dave. And I need help. Will you help me, Bob?
I will, Dave. Help yourself, too.
I never did that before. I never asked anybody for help. Why now? Why in this situation? Why with alcohol? Do I need help?
Because you can't do it alone, Dave. It's that simple.
Okay. I'm an alcoholic, okay?
All right.
Okay?
Isn't it neat what happens when we get honest and get real? Amazing. Yeah. How about a group hug for Dave? What do you think?
Yeah. No more handshakes.
No matter how much the athlete learns in treatment about the disease or how far they've progressed toward sobriety, he or she must continue in aftercare, what they started in treatment. Addicts and alcoholics who don't continue a 12-step program such as Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous, if they don't continue a program like one of these, especially in the first 3 months after treatment, relapse is almost guaranteed. Often, however, the only aftercare provided by the teams they return to is drug testing, and the addict needs more than the fear of testing positive to keep him clean. So what are the drug policies of the 4 major professional sports leagues and the NCAA? Well, they combine testing, treatment, or suspension in some form. The NHL's is direct and tough. No drug use tolerated, even if it happened 5 years earlier.
If you're using or involved with illegal drugs, you will be suspended. You see, we have an objective. The objective is we don't want any player involved with illegal drugs. And that's why we sort of have a zero tolerance policy, because we believe that can accomplish that objective.
It's a tough policy, and some people feel it discourages the player from seeking help. In the other leagues, players can come forward, get counseling and treatment, then they'll be tested, and if they test positive again, they're suspended. NBA Commissioner David Stern thinks that policy is good for the players.
Our experts tell us that unless we can get that player to face up to it, that he's on a road to destruction, and that his only hope is having that low point reached so he can begin the self-awareness that enables him to become a recovering addict.
Although aftercare is the most important factor in the recovery rate, the leagues just dictate testing and suspension and leave aftercare to the teams.
Well, the aftercare is primarily, I would say, left to the team and the player and their advisors. We've been told by a number of experts that you can't force aftercare on people. This is something that they have to come to grips with themselves.
Some teams do force players to come back to work before they're ready. The implication is come back and play or lose your spot on the roster.
Our frustrations come in returning them back to their team too quickly when we feel that they need further time. We've been denied our recommendations to the club based on the fact that, yes, coaches, owners have told us they need the player back as soon as possible. And when we go back and say the player's not ready to come, they request him back anyhow.
Whether league policies are right or wrong, they're meaningless unless the player wants treatment, takes aftercare, and keeps himself clean and sober.
Treatment does not work when you don't want it to work. You know, I tell people all the time, if you're not ready to get sober, don't come in here, because it won't work. We'll screw up your drinking, but we won't keep you sober.
Some teams on their own have moved toward policies that make it easier for the athlete to stay sober. These are the results of an informal survey conducted by ABC Sports. The NFL is the only league to ban alcohol from the locker room. However, in the past 5 years, teams in other leagues have also taken that step. Individuals can make a difference as well. Sam Rutigliano, former coach of the Cleveland Browns, helped create a group called the Inner Circle, which met every week of the year in Rutigliano's office. Players could come to Inner Circle meetings without concern over confidentiality.
I just couldn't coach like an ostrich, where I was going to put my head in the sand, knowing full well that it's going on. Now, that doesn't indict, 28 head coaches in the National Football League, but it does bring a statement that they need to be involved. If they are not involved, there's no way in the world you'll ever stop the bleeding.
Horse racing has Jim Ryan, who decided to do something on his own to help backstretch personnel. He donated $1 million spread among 50 racetracks across the country to start recovery programs.
I raced for 20 years, and for 15 years I saw the trustee rooms. I saw the brass nameplate on the horse. And my wife said, "Did you notice the person holding that horse?" And I said, I didn't even see. She said, "It had no socks on, was cold out, no shoestrings, and the person reeked of alcohol." I missed it. And once I started to see it, it really became obvious that something ought to be done, and we decided to, at least try to get it started, prime the pump.
More than 8,000 people have been helped through Jim Ryan's program with the racetracks, which have matched his financial contribution to the effort.
It seems like it's a worthwhile program. I never spent $1 million better in my whole life.
It isn't only football and basketball players, jockeys and hot walkers who need help. There's plenty of addiction at the executive and owner level. Consider Tom Meeker, president of Churchill Downs. He runs the Kentucky Derby.
Alcohol can be a part of your life, and that's what it is to normal people. For me, it had become my life. I mean, it was a key ingredient of decision making. I mean, if you can imagine making a decision about when you schedule meetings so that they wouldn't go over 5:30 so that you can get to a drink.
In Derby Week of 1989, Mika realized that he had a problem he couldn't solve alone.
I was getting prepared to go out for the umpteenth time on Derby Week, and I was sitting there, and I noticed who was sitting next to me, and it was a big glass of vodka, and I just sat there in the cool of the evening, as it were, and asked myself, why am I doing this?
Tom went to a treatment center, but before he went, there was a problem. Should he just disappear for 30 days or more, or should he announce publicly what his problem was? Well, Tom Meeker decided to go public, and a year and a half later, long since back to work, he feels no embarrassment about it.
If I could live for 30 years doing the things that I did under the influence of alcohol and weather the storm of embarrassment associated with some of those acts, I guarantee you I can weather the storm of any embarrassment associated with admitting the fact that I'm an alcoholic.
Now it's the final week, and this place is beginning to seem like home. Friendships have been made.
You ready, Dave?
Yes, I'm coming. Hungry.
Jokes have been played on each other.
Hey!
Games have been played with each other.
Hey!
But it isn't quite over yet.
No, group, it's their last day here in treatment. How are you feeling?
For the first time, I got real friends. Nobody here want nothing from me. Y'all put up with me, the good times and the bad. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I know what I have to do. I know I want to stay sober. I don't know if I can. I'm scared.
The friendships I've made here, give me a lot of hope, because I know that I can make these friendships, wherever I go, because we all have the same, we're all in the same boat. We're all in this together, and I used to feel like I was out there all alone, and now I finally feel like there's some hope because I'm not alone anymore.
I just know that I can't let you guys go, and I'm taking you with me back home. And I'm going to find you there. I'm going to find some people who are alcoholics, because now that I am one, and I know I am one, and I know there's other people, it's like a huge burden has been lifted. It's lifted. You guys are going to be there. They'll just be different faces.
How about you, Dave?
I'm excited. I gotta admit, be honest with you, but I have a real great fear of leaving. And I don't know if I'm completely sad to leave, but I have a fear of leaving. I feel so good physically. I have that's a question. Should you feel that high? I know it's only been a short period of time, but I feel like I can do anything right now. And it scares me, feeling that way.
We start to feel a little better physically, and we think we've got it made. Think we have all the answers. And complacency, cockiness, being too sure is your greatest enemy. So that fear is a very healthy fear. You've all got another drunk in you, but you don't know whether you have another sobering up in you. Because a lot of people that go out there and try it again don't get back. They just don't. That's the reality. Treatment is only treatment. It is not recovery. Treatment gives you a 28-day period without a drink or a drug. But your recovery begins the minute you leave here. And you all have built a bond here that will be with you the rest of your lives. You may never see each other again, but you're never going to forget what you had here.
The use of alcohol and other drugs affects all segments of the population, including collegiate athletics. Now, administrators, athletics directors, and coaches from NCAA colleges and universities have the unique opportunity to broaden their understanding of alcohol and drug addiction by attending special professional in-residence programs at the Betty Ford Center. The NCAA thanks ABC Sports and Betty Ford for making these special programs available to our member institutions.
So, Dave has been through treatment. Did it take? No one knows for sure. Remember, many relapse. Denial is strong.
Just learning to deal with life on life's terms without a drink or a drug is what sobriety is all about. And it's the best reward you can give yourself.
Dave, surrender isn't defeat. It's peace.
Dave, no matter what, you don't have to take that drink.
I will be here for you, Dave. If you ever need me, give me a call.
You want to stay sober today? One day at a time.
I can't make it alone, and you can't make it alone. But together, I know we can make it.
Well, group, today we're having a medallion ceremony for Dave. And this medallion does not have a lot of intrinsic value, but most people value it a great deal. This represents a lot of hard work, a lot of pain, a lot of honesty, a lot of courage, and a lot of laughter and joy and love. And I think you've earned it when you get it. So I don't believe anybody takes it lightly once they get a medallion. And what I found out is that you're not all that tough. You're just a great big marshmallow. That's right.
So the 4 weeks have passed. Now Dave must handle the rest of his life. Treatment is finished. Step 1 in recovery has been completed. Now comes the much more difficult part, returning to their sport, to the stadium or the arena, no longer protected from the pressure of the crowd or the ambiance of the locker room. Started down a recovery road that they must travel for the rest of their life. It's a bumpy road. No glamour, no magic, no glory, no crowd to cheer them on except their colleagues in extended aftercare. And by the way, only a small percentage ever return to the level of ability that they displayed before addiction captured them. You might wonder why we focused on the athlete today instead of on the general populace. Well, it's because the athlete in today's America more than ever is a hero figure, a role model. What the athlete does, many kids will imitate. For that reason, to me, the athlete leaves his or her privacy behind when they put on the uniform of their sport and walk onto that playing field. Like it or not, they are role models. Like it or not, they have responsibility to the young people who worship them. And I think that we in television share in the responsibility to an extent because our pictures and our commentary make them larger-than-life figures. We put them in your living room for you and your children to see. Somebody said that sport doesn't build character, it reveals it. So the figures you see should be worthy of your admiration. Not superhuman, but people who are facing problems and trying just as hard as they can to deal with them. None of us can do more than that, and the hero athlete has a responsibility to do no less. Ideally, no athlete would ever touch drugs in the first place. And had that always been the case, we can't help but wonder what might have been. I'm Jim McKay.
The Boston Celtics draft from the University of Maryland, Glenn Byers.
Another tremendous save by goalie Pelle Lindbergh. This kid's walking in the footsteps of hockey's greatest goalies.
Pass thrown over the middle, and it's intercepted by Don Rogers, one of the most promising defensive backs to enter the league in a while.
When you're all the way down and there is no place to go, that's when you realize that it's just the big ego. Peace will come with faith and trust. The higher power is in control. One day, one step at a